Hey everyone, welcome to Judging for the Win. I'm Dave, and this is my daily ruling. A couple of days ago, I had an episode where I made an offhand comment that it would be possible for you to use Croaking Counterpart to copy something that had Changeling. You would just have to jump through a couple of hoops to do it. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about what exactly those hoops might be and how you could accomplish this. So, if you wanted to use Croaking Counterpart targeting a Mistwalker, what would you do? Okay, so your first impulse here might be that we could do it if we made it lose Changeling, say with something like Dress Down. And that would make a lot of sense, but let's think a little bit about how continuous effects work first. So we know that Dress Down applies in layer 6 because it's adding and removing abilities, and that's what layer those types of effects apply in. And we know that Changeling is a continuous effect that makes you gain creature types, which means that it would apply in layer 4. You might already be starting to see what the problem is here. By the time that the Dress Down makes the Changeling ability go away, the Changeling ability has already applied because it applies in an earlier layer than what Dress Down does. And so that means that losing Changeling actually does absolutely nothing, and the creature is still going to have all creature types even though it does not have Changeling anymore. So for this reason, you are not going to really see any cards that say gain or lose Changeling, and so that's the reason why. This also applies for Devoid, which also applies in an earlier layer than ability adding and removing, so you probably are not going to see any effects that say gains Devoid or loses Devoid either. Okay, so if that's not going to work, well, what would? So another thing that people might be thinking is, okay, well, what if we had the Mistwalker and we turned it into a copy of something else that did not have Changeling and was not a frog, say like a Grizzly Bears? So if your only goal was to play a Croaking Counterpart targeting a Mistwalker, which I guess is what it asked for in the problem statement, then technically this solution does work. But I don't consider it to be a particularly good one, and here's why. So if you become a copy of Grizzly Bears, then that means you're not going to have Changeling and you're not going to have any creature types anymore, only Bear, but you're also going to lose all of your other abilities too. And so if you use a Croaking Counterpart targeting a Mistwalker that is currently a copy of Grizzly Bear, that would basically be the same thing as if you just played a Croaking Counterpart targeting a Grizzly Bear. You would not be getting any of the abilities that are on Mistwalker because when you become a copy of something else, then those abilities are going to get overwritten. And obviously that's good for Changeling because we need the Changeling to go away, but it's not good if you wanted Flying or one of those other abilities. So I wouldn't really consider this to be a great solution for that reason. So what would be a good solution? Well, the way that I think is the best way to do it would be to have it lose all of its creature types. You could do this with something like a Nameless Inversion or maybe an Amoeboid Changeling. You can see the Amoeboid Changeling, by the way, does not have tap target creature gains Changeling as its top ability. Of course, the reason for that is because that would not do anything, as we discussed a little bit earlier. But if you used Amoeboid Changeling to make it lose all of its creature types, then it would not be a frog, and then you would be able to copy it using a Croaking Counterpart just normal, and that would be perfectly good. Another thing that you could use would be something that sets its creature type to a specific thing. So, okay, Frogify is probably not a great example because you need it to not be a frog. But for example, if you had Lignify, that would indeed cause it to be a tree folk, and therefore it would not be a frog anymore because you are setting its creature type to a specific thing, which overwrites all the existing creature types. So even though it's already a tree folk, it's only going to be a tree folk because when you set a creature type to a specific thing and you don't use the phrase in addition to its other types, then that means that you are not going to have any of the creature types that you used to have. You're only going to have the specific one that it defines for you in that ability. Remember again that losing Changeling does absolutely nothing, so the fact that Lignify makes it lose all its abilities, that doesn't really affect things at all here. Another thing that makes this better than the previous answer where we just made it a copy of something else is that even though we lost all the abilities, when you make a copy of something, you're not copying any continuous effects that are acting on that object. So when you make a copy of the Mistwalker that's enchanted with Lignify using Croaking Counterpart, you are not going to be copying the fact that it has a Lignify continuously affecting it. And so the thing that you make is indeed going to have the abilities that the creature normally would have. Well, I guess that's not true because it won't have Changeling. I made a video about that a little bit ago, and you can see that in the link above if you're interested in knowing exactly why that would not be the case. But other than the fact that it's not going to copy Changeling, it will have all the other abilities that the Mistwalker would normally have, even though the Lignify is affecting the original Mistwalker. So the last one that I wanted to talk about was conspiracy. So let's say I had a conspiracy naming humans and a Mistwalker. Again, because the conspiracy does not say in addition to its other types, that means that all of my creatures are going to be humans and humans only, and that's going to be the case for the Mistwalker also. Even though the Mistwalker is already a human, it's not going to be a human and everything else. It's going to be a human and only a human because of conspiracy affecting it. Now, I can already see some people thinking, hey, with conspiracy, let's say the conspiracy came out before the Mistwalker did. So wouldn't that mean that the conspiracy has an earlier timestamp, and that would mean that it would apply before the Changeling applies and makes the Mistwalker a human, and then the Changeling is going to apply and make the Mistwalker have all the creature types. And, of course, that's not what we want to have happen. But fortunately, that is, in fact, not going to happen, even if the conspiracy has an earlier timestamp. And this is the reason why in any layer or sublayer, continuous effects that are characteristic defining effects, such as Changeling, are going to always apply before other types of continuous effects. And so even though the Changeling might have a later timestamp than the conspiracy, because the conspiracy is not a characteristic defining ability, but the Mistwalker's Changeling is a characteristic defining ability, then we would apply the Changeling first, no matter what the timestamps of them are, and we would apply the conspiracy after that. So it turns out it doesn't matter what the relative order that these came into play is. The end result is always going to be the same, which is that the Mistwalker is going to be a human and not any of the other card types. So with the conspiracy, this would also be another good answer that would allow you to play the Croaking Counterpart targeting the Mistwalker. And that's all I have for you today. How did you do? I know this was a little bit different from what I normally try to do because there isn't a specific question or a specific answer that I had in mind. In fact, if you have something that you think would work pretty well, go ahead and leave it in the comments because I'm sure that I left out some really awesome ones. But that's all I have for you today. Join me again tomorrow for another daily ruling, but until then, I hope you have a great day.